Don't you just adore Halo's campaigns? Such a fun and rewarding way of tackling the sandbox that Halo has to offer. If you're like me, the first thing you do is dive into the single-player experience when a new Halo title drops. It's a rite of passage that I complete the campaign before diving into anything else. I love the campaign, and in terms of Halo CE to Reach, there's a lot of fun to be had with their levels, the nature of the level design, the sandbox and the tools they allow you to play with, but it's limited. The sandbox is excellent, but there's only so much you can do within the confines of the campaign. You jump into the multiplayer. But how many times can you fight a different fight in the same area? Just for the record, this never gets old for me, but hang in there while I get to the point. There's a finite amount of things that you can truly do with the sandboxes of campaign and multiplayer. This must have been something that occurred to Bungie post Halo 2 at some point. Someone must have asked if there was a different way to tinker with the sandbox.
Oh, hello. I am 343 Guilty Spark, monitor of installation 04.
Halo 2 was such a groundbreaking game, and it did a lot to move the FPS genre forward, pioneering online gaming's infrastructure and setting the bar for matchmaking and how it would work in such a strong way that platforms for multiplayer really haven't dramatically shifted all that much. So trying to follow suit from something so defining and groundbreaking, it's a daunting task to say the least. You know, Bungie looked at Halo 2 and thought to themselves, what can we do to push online gaming even further? Oh, I know. Let's let people choose where to spawn weapons. A simple idea on its own, but when you get something like storage crates in Halo 3, and people find out how to make objects float with a teleporter, suddenly people are creating transformative content. And instead of just moving weapons, you're suddenly hiding everyone in a storage crate and giving the infected gravity hammers so they can knock people off the platforms, floating on teleporters. Not only this, but Bungie took the custom game parameters in Halo 2 and cranked them to an 11. Suddenly you could lower the gravity to half of what it typically was for certain people, or you could increase the gravity to a point where you could barely jump. You could increase melee damage, or you could make people outright invincible to everything except assassinations. You could decrease people's movement speed. You could take these tools and combine them with Forge to create a completely new experience that Halo wasn't even meant to have. Bungie saw what people were doing and realized the brilliance of it all. Before long, Bungie was in on the fun. They saw the potential and decided to double down on it. The Halo 3 Heroic Map Pack released, and with it we suddenly had a Forge palette. You could take these objects and you could make a completely unique map that utilized the tools given in a way never before. Suddenly we had people getting soccer balls launched at them with gravity lifts. We had man cannons being used to make Infection a simple game of launching objects down a chute and splattering people with the physics alone. You had entire Rube Goldberg contraptions being created, and you had people making art out of these pieces. The importance of this is not simply that the community had the tools, but that Bungie did nothing but cheer the people utilizing these tools on, and encourage them to push the tools as far as they could go. If you were around for Halo 3's DLC, you'd know that by the time Halo Reach was getting ready to launch, Halo 3's Forge was unrecognizable from its original state. We had lighting effects, and sources, we had kill balls, we had entire building palettes, we had people recreating classic maps by breaking Forge completely, and the budgetary limits put in place for performance just to push the limits that much further. Bungie pushed this even further with the launch of Halo Reach, granting us a mind-blowingly large Forge palette to get in all kinds of trouble with. That's not the only way you can mess with the Halo sandbox. Have you ever just no-scoped a guy around a corner? Have you ever fired a rocket at a grunt and watched as they catapulted into the next dimension? Have you ever had something crazy happen to you like, oh, I don't know, getting killed by a traffic cone in Halo 3? Those moments are fantastic, and everyone loved experiencing them and being able to talk about them. But that's just it. That's all you could do, was talk about them. You couldn't really prove it, not in Halo 2 anyway. Good news. Halo 3 came out, and with it, the Theater Mode. Theater Mode was a game changer in a completely different way than Forge. It meant all of a sudden that the community could now take any moment and save it forever. They could get a little clip of gameplay and play it back as much as they wanted, or they could send the clip to a friend. They could play around with the visuals in the game and create crazy images that looked absolutely badass or funny. Hell, sometimes people would combine Forge and Theater by making set pieces in the background or giving an elite Batman wings. But that's nothing compared to what the content creators did with it.
I are die, who can teach you lesson.
Nah, see? It's moving slower.
I'm coming for you. Milky Milk. Oh yeah. The commander is going to melander the milk out of you, Milky Milk.
All of a sudden, you had the ability to be the cameraman. If you had capturing software, suddenly you had this ability to create any content that you wanted to. And that's exactly what people did. 2007 to 2011 saw this incredible boom of content creators just messing around with the Halo sandbox and creating these absolutely incredible things. I remember being only 13 years old and only wanting to try and make a machinima of my own. It's all I wanted to do. But I couldn't wrap my head around creating anything that wasn't a blatant ripoff of something else that already existed. Theater mode all of a sudden meant that everybody could take what they did and all the tools that they had and run with them. There were also a million interesting little ways you could modify the game's kind of particle effects and whatnot to make background images look more interesting. You could suddenly change the lighting without using effects and simply by using, I don't know, a grenade exploding behind you or a rocket launcher being fired by you to create all kinds of wonderful effects. In most shooters nowadays, you find a theater mode where you can go back and watch your gameplay as it happened. That's because Bungie set the standard and said this is something that everyone should have access to. Halo 3 had this mystical power of somehow always being in my head. If I was at school, I was thinking of what custom games I was going to play when I got home. I was planning out Forge maps that I could make, terribly mind you, and how my friends would react to them. I'd think about how I could mess with the physics, or how I could break out of the campaign and get to places I wasn't supposed to be. Halo 3 was so transformative that somehow it transcended the idea of a game. For me, this was the first time a game had ever been a full-blown community of people with different interests from completely different walks of life that could all bond over a shared interest in the game and the modular components that it offered everyone. These additions and tools are so important to the Halo community that it's become essential to the franchise. This is somewhere that 343 has done a fairly good job, but the only shortcomings is really that they haven't pushed things outside of their bounds or really created anything completely new for the community to really take in and run with. It's one thing to take the existing tools and optimize them and expand on them and such, but it's something else entirely to give people something they never expected and empower the community to take it and make it their own. Now that we're kind of wrapped up here, guys, I want to say, once again, I know I kind of beat this drum constantly, but I am just consistently impressed with you guys and how much you guys have been interacting with the channel and all the different polls we've been making, all the fun little things, the streams. Thanks for coming out to those as well. Everything has been incredible. I can't believe that from Monday to Wednesday last week, I doubled in subscribers. I went from 1,600 to 3,200, and now we're just about at 4K. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's incredible what you guys have been doing. Now, just as a heads up here, guys, we are going to be having another community night this Friday. Unfortunately, it's only going to be PC, but then the next one after that is going to be Xbox only. You guys, I've been putting up all these silly little posts on social media lately with polls and whatnot, and it's funny how much you guys have been responding to them. I'm going to keep doing stuff like that. That's just fun little stuff to do. It's all so much fun. But I do it on Twitter, I do it on the community page on here, and I'd like to do it on Discord as well. So again, there's the links to all of that stuff below if you want to take a look into it. And there's one last thing I want to talk about before I let you guys go. I actually managed to get a Patreon supporter. I want to give a huge shout out to Colton Pack for being my first Patreon supporter. It is so cool that you decided to support me on Patreon, and I appreciate it so much, Colton. Thank you. Honestly, guys, that's pretty much the gist of it. We got a lot of stuff planned here. I'm going to be doing a video either Thursday or Friday that we're going to have come out that's going to be all about that community stream that we did, the 6-hour stream. So I'm going to chop it up in Premiere, and we're going to make a little bit of content out of it. It's not going to be an essay or anything, but we are going to make something out of it, despite the footage we used in this. Alrighty, guys. Well, hey, you guys have such a wonderful day, and thanks so much for coming by again. Bye-bye.